After months of off-season discussion, it is finally time for the regular season to get underway. We'll preview the first two games of the season, plus some predictions on how the Central Division will unfold, and some bold predictions for the Minnesota Wild as the season unfolds. All that and more on today's episode of Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, this is Brandon Duham, and this is Locked on Wild.
Welcome into another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, as always, for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the course of the week. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, we preview the start of the season with Alex Micheletti. We'll talk about this week's games, how the Central Division will play out, and we'll take a look at some bold predictions for the Wild this season and see how we do as things unfold. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, and Alex, it is the calm before the storm. The Wild unfortunately had to deal with the news of Jared Spurgeon's injury last week, but they put the beat down on the Dallas Stars in the preseason finale on Saturday, much in a similar fashion that the Michigan Wolverines did to the Gopher football team. We both had a chance to see that in person. Oh, boy. But the Wilds, they come out of the preseason, and with the exception of Jared Spurgeon's injury, they're healthy. And this team is ready to rock. And so it's about time we get the regular season started.
Yes, Minnesota sports fans need some hope. So thank goodness the Twins came through last night. But now we need the Wild to to help get us through the winter here and start the journey. It's we've been waiting, and the preseason always seems to take way too long. So for hockey, so they're ready to go and facing some adversity right off the bat with the captain being hurt. So it's going to be an interesting start.
And a few things that I'm sure we'll learn throughout the course of these next few days. The Wild still have yet to officially announce their second alternate captain. So that will be coming, I'm sure. But what we do know on Thursday at XL Energy Center is that the Wild will be playing the Florida Panthers, who made that miraculous run from, oh my gosh, we're not even going to make the postseason, to let's just go beat everybody. And they go through Boston and just tear a wide path of destruction in the Eastern Conference all the way to the Stanley Cup final. But then they get rolled by the Vegas Golden Knights. And so it's a Panthers team that obviously has some top-end talent. But as you noted to me, they have some injuries on the blue line that have led to some fascinating pairings that they will likely be dealing with on opening night.
Yeah, it's crazy. They have Dmitry Kulikov in their top four. Who would have ever thought he'd still be in a top four role with any team? So he's with Florida now, and they also signed Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who's been a disaster in Vancouver, and he wasn't very good with Arizona to begin with, and so he's on their top pairing with Gustav Forsland. They're missing Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour, who are going to be out first couple of months. They both of those guys played their hearts out to try to get a cup for Florida, and so they're hurting on the back end, and so that's where the Wild will have to take advantage of for sure.
And it's still a very veteran Florida team. You've got
Mhm.
Matthew Tkachuk, who had the fantastic season, fantastic postseason. Sergei Bobrovsky certainly is no stranger to odds and ends things happening in the NHL. And of course, you've got veteran head coach Paul Maurice. So a tough test for the Minnesota Wild to start things off with the season in full swing. But as I kind of alluded to last week, and I was curious to get your thoughts on this too, is that it's one thing to go up against a team like this who plays at a little slower pace without the services of Jared Spurgeon. It's another thing entirely to then move there from whatever happens on Thursday to going on the road on Saturday to take on the perennial powerhouse Toronto Maple Leafs, who have a ton of speed. And so whatever happens on Thursday, that's a tough encore to go on the road to Toronto. The Wild had the one game in Toronto last year where Philip Gustafsson had maybe one of his best games of the season, and they still ended up losing in overtime. So it's a tough couple of games to start the season. And so you should win at home on Thursday because it's going to be tough to do so on Saturday against Toronto.
Yeah, you'll be playing lots of Minnesota connections there with Ryan Reeves and John Klingberg, and then Matthew Nyes, former Gopher. So yeah, it's that should be very interesting. And without Spurgeon too, he was such a stalwart on the penalty kill. So the penalty kill, that'll be interesting to see how they divvy up that playing time and who plays with Jonas Brodin and just if they're going to keep it. Yeah, I don't know what the defensive pairings are going to be. It's going to be fascinating to see what they do if they keep Brodin with Faber or not. And then you have the conundrum of Alex Goligoski, John Merrill, and Kalen Addison all having to play. So, that's what kind of worries me for Thursday. So, stay out of the box if possible. That's the main thing.
It's always a good rule of thumb. And I had to laugh because I was following along with what was going on Saturday, and Russo tweeted out at one point that the Wild had like a minute 16 of 5-on-3. And so I kind of made a mental bookmark of that and then came back later and he said something to the effect of that was not great. And so I'm like, we are in regular season form already. Let's get this season started.
Yes.
Obviously though, like that's going to be a key area for this team.
Yep.
Is what those special teams look like as the season unfolds, because much like a field goal within 30 yards, ask any team except the Vikings, it feels like a 5-on-3 is pretty automatic, or should be. And yet here we sit, and the Wild have certainly had their troubles with those over the last few seasons.
Yeah, you can give them a standing ovation if they could just get it into the zone. That the struggles of just trying to get it into the zone were unbelievable last year. And in the second unit, you just wave the white flag if they get on the ice. So hopefully they can figure that out, because you need 2 units, and you can't just assume that the top unit is going to score. So the second unit, they can get 45 seconds. That's still a decent amount of time. So they're definitely going to have to take advantage, because I think it's going to be a lot harder to score in the Central this upcoming season. I think it just got the players that came into the division, and you got teams like Arizona that are up and coming, and you just aren't gonna get automatic W's in this division. It's gonna be an absolute dogfight.
Yeah, and on the topic of the Central Division, which we will tackle next, we're going to go through and kind of look at how we think the standings will play out. And I'm going to tell you here right now, I have the Arizona Coyotes finishing ahead of a team that some are calling a playoff contender. Buckle up. We'll talk about that as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. The NHL season is finally here. Will the Vegas Golden Knights reign supreme again? As you can tell, I obviously love the NFL a ton, and I know listeners do as well. That's why I want to tell you about Sleeper. Sleeper is my go-to platform for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you have the chance to win 100 times your cash on daily fantasy. The NHL has never been more exciting than it is now, with star players like McDavid, Ovechkin, Crosby, and Makar. Also, Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy, you name it. You could even go to the Florida Panthers, Matthew Tkachuk, and others. Simply select more or less based on their stats, such as goals, assists, points, saves, and more. Yes, you heard me, Wild fans. Sleeper offers 100-time payouts. So start paying attention, make the right picks, and you could win big. Kirill Kaprizov, always a safe bet to take the over in shots, in goals, and in points. So if you're going to do something for Thursday night, that'd be where I would suggest to start. Make sure you use promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. For the everydayers, we will be continuing to take a look at the 2023-2024 season, just a few days away. And so we'll get you set for Thursday's opener, what to watch, and where we should be concerned or excited as we get set for the season. Let's take a look at the Central Division, Alex, and just kind of look at where we expect the standings to finish up once the season is finished. I think a lot of people agree that it's a division that has several tiers to it. First tier is Dallas and Colorado. Those are clearly the two best teams in this division. Now, as to who ends up winning or not, I know a lot of the projections and statistics say it's going to be Colorado again, with Dallas second and the Minnesota Wild third. Are people underestimating the Dallas Stars as Central Division winners this year, or is this still Colorado's division until proven otherwise?
No, 100% there. It's Jake Ottinger is a lot better than Gorgiev, I think. I don't think it's I don't think it's close, to be honest with you. I mean, Colorado, no matter who the goalie is, they kind of mask their goaltenders' deficiencies. I mean, Gorgiev was okay, but he wasn't great. I mean, he lost to the Kraken in the playoffs. I mean, so
right,
that goes to show you. I mean, I'll still hold this to this day. If Braden Point is 100% healthy, he probably helps. Tampa probably beats Colorado in that Stanley Cup when they had Kemper. I just didn't think Kemper was great, and we're seeing that play out in Washington. It wasn't great in Washington. So, anytime you have Jake Ottinger, he's gonna elevate your team to the next level. And the ageless Joe Pavelski,
right.
just still getting it done with Robo and and that crew. And a guy that I cannot believe they were able to get was Matt Duchene too. That's a giant pickup for them. I think he's a big upgrade over a guy like Max Domi. So even though Max had a good run there at the end, but I think Matt Duchene is going to have an excellent year in Dallas.
We'll see Max Domi with Toronto.
Yep.
So some more pleasantries, I'm sure, that bled over from the Dallas series will be exchanged. but then also Ryan Reeves and John Klingberg as well. maybe we'll have what happened to the Wild against Toronto in Toronto, where Klingberg just ends up being the defenseman out of position that turns the puck over, and it leads to a point-blank look and a win for the Wild in OT.
You can only hope.
Have that. Yeah, that'd be some poetic justice, but I'm with you. I think Dallas has a ton of depth this year too, and yes, you could look at Colorado's top 6 and give the edge because of specific players, but I think overall, I think Dallas has the much deeper lineup, and yes, Ottinger is the better goalie, so I think I'm going to say Dallas takes the division, but Colorado is obviously going to be the number 2 team. They're just better than anybody else in the division, and so those will be your 1 and your 2. I'm interested in kind of how the rest of this plays out, because I have for a while held that the Minnesota Wild then are next. And there's a little bit of separation between the likes of Winnipeg, the likes of Nashville, St. Louis. And in some of the vibes that I'm getting, I'm going to tweak it slightly. I think it's Minnesota and Winnipeg in that next tier. And then there's a space. And then it's Nashville and St. Louis. Vibes are not great in St. Louis heading into this season. They're just kind of a weird dynamic with the lineup, that there are a ton of older guys. I mean, just look at Minnesota, same thing. It's an older roster, and there just is such a variable direction that they could go depending on how Jordan Binnington performs. If he's not great, they don't have anybody else in net, and so you feel like you're kind of stuck with him, good or bad. And so I think, even though I'm putting them in the same tier, I have a feeling that Winnipeg is just going to fall off the face of the earth this year, which is why, even though I said that they're probably in the same tier, I'm not picking Winnipeg to finish 3rd or 4th. I'm going Minnesota 3rd. I am picking the Winnipeg Jets to finish 7th in the division, just behind the St. Louis Blues. I'm picking the Arizona Coyotes to finish 5th this season in the Central.
I like it. It's bold. Yeah, it's definitely bold. I think Nashville. Yeah, I think Nashville's right there with the Wild. I think those are the 2 teams that are going to be battling out for 3rd. It's gonna come down to the goaltending. Is Saros better than Gus and Fleury? For helping out that team get to that 3rd spot. It's going to be an absolute dogfight, and I do like your Arizona pick. Winnipeg and St. Louis just are not. Yeah, I don't know what the direction was. They make that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, and some people think they got the better end of it. I don't know. I really like Dubois. Some don't. But I mean, the Kings now, their center depth is just it's crazy. It's absurd. Absurd. I'm so glad that they aren't in the Central, because they have the best center depth in the West.
By far.
It's not even close.
And that's with Edmonton boasting Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
Right, which is crazy to think. Yeah.
I mean, that Kings center depth is enviable, what they're able to do, because, if you want Pierre-Luc Dubois to be your 1C, he can. Or you have this guy named Anze Kopitar who's been doing this for literal decades.
Yes.
And just continues to.
He doesn't age.
No, he's like a fine wine. He just gets better the older he gets. And so I think we will see more of the Winnipeg sell-off at the deadline, because they really don't have a choice. If they're not going to re-sign Connor Hellebuyck, you got to get something for him.
Yeah.
And that's why I also
Mark Scheifele too.
Mark Scheifele as well. That's why I also kind of predicted that I thought Arizona would be a great landing spot for Hellebuck. If they're even close to the postseason conversation this year, it feels like they're going to go for it pretty aggressively to try to help out that young lineup. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's the one thing that Arizona seems to, they just can't figure out is the goaltending.
Mm-hmm.
If they could, because when they lose, their
like
goaltenders
7-4.
Yeah, it's like, come on. I mean, the offense. I mean, Clayton Keller is a superstar. Every time I watch that guy, it's like, if he was on any other team, I mean, this guy would be talked about, in the national media all the time. But it's because he plays for, a team that, has lost a lot, that I don't think he gets the full recognition that he deserves.
I would fully agree. I think it's an Arizona team that's on the up.
Yep.
And so it may not be that the postseason is in their future this year, but
it's coming.
They are close to hitting that mark. So it'll be interesting to see just how the standings play out, because there could be some big ramifications for teams depending on where they place. Winnipeg, St. Louis. So we'll see how things play out there, but I think we're both in agreement. It's looking like another third place finish for the Minnesota Wild here in 2023-2024. Now, as for how they get there statistically, I've got some thoughts. Got some bold thoughts that we're going to hit you with as we finish today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Final segment of today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. For the everydayers, make sure that you subscribe and turn notifications on, because now that the season is upon us, we will be resuming live post games after each and every game this season. We will have pregame previews for you as well throughout the season. So make sure you don't miss out on any of the intel you need as we gear up for the start of the season. Let's talk some bold predictions. Alex Micheletti joining us here for our usual Monday episode. And we're just going to run through a few that popped into my head. In the article that Michael Russo and Joe Smith did, where they asked one question per player, the question for Kirill Kaprizov was, can he flirt with the 50 goal mark? Which I chuckled when that was asked to Bill Guerin on K-Fan, because he said, well, he already did. He had 47 goals 2 years ago. He had 40 this past season before he got hurt and missed like 18 games. So he's already flirted with that mark. Is this the year that he finally hits it?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. I mean, he has the same line mates that he's really gained great chemistry with, and Zuccarello should be 100%, and same with Hartman, and he's just dominant on special teams. So I think as long as he stays healthy, he should get there.
Looking at other goal milestones. So you've got Kirill with 50, because I agree. I think this is the year that he does it. Everything that he's done everything else. That's the only thing left for him to do. And I feel like he's going to be, especially against Winnipeg, like he might get 10 goals against Winnipeg in the number of games that they play just to get even for what Logan Stanley did to him, intentional or not, to end his season, end his regular season last year. He's going to be on a little bit of a revenge tour this year, I think. And so 50 goals, I think he certainly gets there. What do we think about potential 30-goal scorers for the Wild this season? You've obviously got Matt Boldy, who did it last year. Joel Eriksson Ek has come close. Do we think either of those guys or both end up hitting the 30-goal plateau this year?
I think Ek and Boldy. I really like that how that line is coming together, and as long as Ek stays healthy, there shouldn't be any question. Both I think can get there. And it's just a matter of staying healthy, but because they're going to have a guy playing with them in Marcus Johansson that is such a smart player and can feed them the puck. And then you have Ek, helping out on special teams as well. So he'll get the chance to play with the Zuccarellos, the Kaprizovs as well. And so I think being the net front presence guy, is huge, especially on the power play with getting those goals out front.
Yeah, if we see from what we've been told in practice, if we see more of a focus on shot quantity and trying to quickly get the puck on the net with the power play, it's going to lead to more opportunities for Kirill, because he's going to be told, I'm sure, to just let it rip when he has it. And in the instances in which his shots get deflected or rebounds are loose, that's where Joel Eriksson Ek comes in. So I also think that both guys will get it, because that line, the combination of Eriksson Ek, Johansson, and Boldy, in the games that they played together before Eriksson Ek got hurt, those guys are playing on a sick pace. Like, it's disgusting how good they were over that stretch. Joel Eriksson Ek was basically a point per game guy. Boldy was slightly under that. Johansson had 6 goals in 20 games after he came here. Even if you get like 80% of that, 75% of that, that's still a really good second line that's going to have a ton of chances. And so I think they get there for sure, which leaves you a 50-goal scorer, 2 30-goal scorers. I think we can pencil Matt Zuccarello in for 20 plus, somewhere in there. That's essentially what he's been able to do every season of his career with the Wild since the first year in which he was very clearly hurt. But of the likes of Ryan Hartman, Marcus Foligno, Freddie Gaudreau, Marco Rossi, who has the best chance to exceed 20 goals this year?
That is so hard. Freddie Gaudreau, maybe. I really liked how he played last season. And he's such a skilled guy. And he'll be on special teams unit, albeit not the first, but the second. And he just seems to make an impact on games, even when he's not in a top 6 role. And so I really like how he was shooting the puck last season, and I think he's going to carry that momentum into the season. So I think he would have the best chance.
I'll agree. I think I think it depends if Hartman is able to stay healthy,
right,
and stay productive with that top line, not turn it into a penalty fest. Then I think that's a mark that he could easily hit.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're going full body of work for the season, because this is also kind of the flip side to this, is let's say Hartman ends up dealing with those things again this year. He's going to get bumped. Freddie Gaudreau is the guy that's going to get brought up to that top line. That's
100%.
That's just what he does. And so he, I think, does have the best chance. I feel like putting Rossi ahead of Marcus Foligno in terms of likelihood for 20, because I just don't see that being something that we get ever again.
No, it's a flash in the past, and he's only as he ages too. It's not magically going to go back to the one magic year that he had.
No, I don't think so either. Final one before we wrap up. This is a Wild team that has eclipsed 100 points the last 2 seasons. 113 to, I think they had 103 this last season. Will it be 3 straight, or do we see a sub 100 point Minnesota Wild team here in 2023-2024?
I'm going to say slightly under, but not too big of a difference. I just think the Central is harder this season compared to last season.
Yeah, I'll agree. I'm going to say maybe 99. I'll just say 99, which I think will still be good enough for third. But it's a stretch that I've highlighted all off season since we started to talk about the schedule. Starting November 2nd, this is in order the games that the Wild have. Home against the Devils, at the New York Rangers, home against the New York Rangers, at the Islanders, and I definitely messed that up. But they play just this like 8 or 9 game stretch against all East Coast teams. The Buffalo Sabres are in there too. You've got 2 matchups against the Devils, 2 against the Rangers. You play the Islanders, all in that span. And then there's another stretch at the end of the season in which it's like 8 games in a row on the road, and then like a massive homestand, all against incredibly tough teams. And it just gets harder and harder to replicate as you go successful seasons back to back to back. And so I'm not saying it's not possible that they get a third 100-point season. I just think we see similar things that we saw last year where there's a little bit of regression. It's still a team that is obviously playoff caliber, but they're not going to be in the same discussion as Colorado, as Dallas, as Edmonton, as Vegas. They're just not in that conversation at this point.
No, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's another year where they're in kind of a transition, just trying to figure out how to manage these still buyout years with Zach and Ryan, and so it's gonna be interesting. You have Fleury's probably his last year in the NHL too, and so we were talking before the podcast too of just is Fleury going to get the start on Thursday or not, and how many games are they going to give him to break records and that sort of thing, and is it going to be like a Miguel Cabrera where he's getting getting gifts from all these teams, so it'll be interesting.
Hopefully no $40 bottles of wine from the Oakland Athletics. Big shout out there. But we'll be watching all season to see how some of these play out, and more importantly, how the team does as the season unfolds. So make sure that you stick with Locked On Wild each and every day to keep you updated throughout the course of the season. We will have live post games for you on basically a nightly basis. When games are going on, we'll have pregame previews for you. We'll have big discussion topics throughout the week, as well as some A-plus interviews that are being lined up as we speak as well. So make sure you don't miss any of it by making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. You can find new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.